After 13 hours of not playing the game, Samurai Chizuru is finally able to move a few inches across the screen. This is wow, this is just so wow, it's wow. Samurai Chizuru's Trustmaster reward is a material of 3 different effects, but 2 of them have limits. The first isn't limited at all, giving a 60% attack buff. The second is only available to units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and grants them a weak physical killer against all species. The last effect is limited to Chizuru, giving her resistance to attack breaks. Dealing with attack breaks shouldn't be too difficult to be worth mentioning, and while having such variety with killers is nice, it's not actually very meaningful if you can't use this to really multiply your unit's damage output with stronger values, and the first is just kind of average. Her Super Trustmaster reward is a 2-handed katana with high attack. It boasts a strong physical beast and plant killer as well as boosting equipment attack when your unit's carrying a single weapon. Furthermore, if equipped to Chizuru, she will gain a whopping 1000 attack. Onto her active abilities. Samurai Chizuru's attacks Chain of Bolting Strike. Eastern Winds inflict a 135% wind imperil, a 30% katana imperil, and raises Chizuru's wind resistance by 150%. Strong Samurai Spear will boost Chizuru's attack, defense, and spear by a weird 380%, raises her accuracy, raises her team's stats by 350%, and fills the morale gauge. A Roshi Blade will imbue wind onto your team, then boost their wind damage by 45%. Breezy Barrier will remove any elemental imperils from your team, then boost their wind resistance by 150%, and gives them an HP barrier too. Staunch Samurai Spirit will cure any breaks on your team, then grant resistance to breaks, boost their limit burst gauge fill rate by 200%, and fill their limit burst gauge by a nice amount. Enduring Loyalty requires her limit burst gauge, but in exchange it gives your team a full re-raise buff, and restores some MP and grants an MP regen, though the MP effects won't apply to Chizuru herself. The display also doesn't show a maxed out Brave ability, which is just super useful when you're trying to determine the ability's usefulness. Beast Pulverizer gives Chizuru a whopping 250% physical beast killer buff, and the rest of her team gets a strong double killer against the same species too. She then deals damage that's much stronger against beasts. Plant Pulverizer is the same thing but to plants. Guess what's different about stone and insects? The next Focus Magnus abilities can be used once per battle. They'll each remove the associated break from your team and buff that stat by 400%. Focus Strength works with attack and lets your team evade 5 attacks. Focus Mind works with magic and grants your team an HP barrier that scales with morale. Focus Body works with defense and grants your team a whopping 85% physical mitigation buff. Focus Spirit works with What Do You Think and grants your team a whopping 85% magic mitigation buff. Passives. With her Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, Chizuru gains a flat 1000 attack, gets more attack when holding a katana, 4 strong physical killers against the aforementioned species, and her normal attacks would change to Synchronized Body and Mind, which gives her team a 100% double killer against all species for a single turn. She doesn't have any killer buffs without the ones from the locked passive, but she does have a strong limit burst buff and a good amount of physical evasion. Well, this looks great, but she's at EX plus 3. At the start of the battle, she'll automatically cast True Hayate, which grants her a permanent 20% physical and magical mitigation buff against the aforementioned species. She also gets half the boost to the chain limit cap. Not only that, she also has a Brave ability that can boost the other forms of chain damage, so long as you level that ability up. At EX plus 2, she gets Fearless Warrior, which is essentially Warring Spirit but also has some stats. At EX plus 3, she gets Stealthy Shadow, which is a 500 attack plus a good amount of evasion. Let's look at her limit burst. It boosts her team's accuracy, gives them a 160% physical killer against beasts and plants, then raises the damage modifier of their physical abilities, and lets them evade 2 attacks. The damage modifier increase will actually scale with morale, up to a number of essentially 100, which, has 3 digits. Time to change forts. Samurai Chizuru's Brave Shift has a 3-turn duration and a 2-turn cooldown. Onto her active abilities. Chizuru's Samurai Slashes chain with a triple casted Bolting Strike and scale of morale. However, as it might seem familiar, she can't multicast her abilities anymore. Determined Samurai Slash will give Chizuru a 75% general mitigation buff, a re-raise buff, and lowers enemy accuracy by 25%. Devastating Samurai Slash boosts Chizuru's limit burst damage by 250%, fills her limit burst gauge, inflicts a 140% wind imperil if this display would be better, and though it deals the same damage as the last ability, it has a higher ceiling in Clash of Wills. Dedicated Samurai Slash boosts Chizuru's attack by 400%, then fills the morale gauge, increasing with the number of currently functioning units, inflicts an 85% defense break, and then deals the same damage as Determined Samurai Slash. Spring Wind Blade can be used once per battle. It removes any elemental imbues on Chizuru, imbues wind onto her, and raises her wind damage by a whopping 60%. On the next turn, she will then automatically cast Spring Wind Blade 2, which raises that buff to 75%. And then on the turn after that, she'll activate Spring Windblade 3, at which the buff peaks at 100%, before going back to 60% afterwards. Passes. They're the same. But, for you crazies at EX plus 3, you switch out Stealthy Shadow for Fighting for Honor, which still grants 500 attack but now also gives the other half to the Chain Layer boost. Let's look at her Layer Burst. Enable self-chaining for all of her abilities and this Layer Burst. Lets her evade 5 attacks, then deals damage that scales of morale and self-chains of Extreme Nova. Let's rank Brave abilities. I prioritize Protecting One's Master to boost the passive buffs, Devastating Samurai Slash to raise the Win and Peril and damage modifier, and Enduring Loyalty to increase the MP restore. Time to make a damage rotation. On turn 1, cast Strong Samurai Spirit, Eastern Winds, and the third will likely be Orochi Blade if you're fighting something weak to wind. On turn 2, activate her Brave Shift, and cast Spring Windblade. On turn 3, cast Devastating Samurai Slash. On turn 4, activate her Layer Burst. On turn 5, you switch back, so triple cast one of the Pulverizers. Repeat the rotation from here. You can switch out Spring Windblade for dedicated Samurai Slash instead. So, EX2. At EX plus 2, you got Fearless Warrior and her Super Trustmaster reward. Chizuru's Super Trustmaster reward might not really stand out without this killer boss, but that flat 1000 attack for Chizuru herself will certainly make it tempting when combined with her own lock passive. An instant Layer Burst isn't extraordinarily useful, unless you're really trying to ramp up your damage in the early stages of a fight. You'll really have to plan to make good use of it, as even though the damage modifier buff is a buff, especially at high morale, the effect only lasts for a single turn. The killer buffs are certainly powerful, sure, but it's also only 10% higher than what's already available in her kit. Which, well, it's 10% higher, so dang, I guess I can't argue with math. EX plus 3, I can't afford it, go away! So how good is Samurai Chizuru? Well, she has strong stat buffs because that arrow points upwards, has the staple 4 killers from significant supporters like Ling, takes inspiration from Ilmatali's Omni Killer and makes that her normal attack, adds in resistance to breaks, then takes the wind support from Bulwark but her strong mitigation buffs affects your whole team rather than a single ally, borrows the on-demand Elemental Imperil removal from Kresnik, matches Kaido's best weapon Imperil and makes that on-demand too, and can even self-chain because she is a good unit. Also, none of these abilities are locked to Clash of Wills. Also, her damage is ridiculous. In terms of burst damage, she actually hits harder than the standalone Esther, though Esther is still much faster, so she's better as the fight goes on. The same holds true for a standalone Wilk, to a lesser extent I guess, but either way we're comparing a non-premium unit to 2 premiums, which is alone a testament to her capabilities. Now, even in spite of all this, she's not perfect, as there are a few hiccups in her kit. Enduring Loyalty has a pretty big cost for effect that can be found from a healer, but considering she's not a healer in the first place and it's more of a tool to use in a dire situation, I suppose that's forgivable. While she may cover break removal and resistance, she doesn't have anything for status ailments, stop, or chart, which, I mean, she has Elemental Imperil removal, that's really useful too. Still, lacking those things might be an issue, but come on, you're not hurting for options there. Her Pulverizers may have powerful modifiers, but only against their respective species, but her second form's damage more than makes up for this. Actually, if you consider that, it's a big boon if those damage bonuses happen to apply, huh? But a more significant topic is the limitations on Spring Windblade. Despite the fact that it's a powerful wind buff for Chizuru, it only lasts for a single rotation, and afterwards her damage won't be able to compete against the onslaught from Wilk or Esther. The lack of a true Brave Shift can also be a slight problem, as Chizuru loses some valuable support abilities once she activates it, and there's no way to revert back early without dying. But simple solutions are just hold off on damage or prepare better for the game, which, you know, tactics. Overall, Chizuru is an amazing unit, and despite the fact that I listed the many things she could do, I also deliberately ignored the other things that other units bring to the table, which in turn leaves her well balanced and not a permanent factor you can't go without, making her an alternate option rather than a straight up replacement for many global original units. Which is why, even 6 years after the game's been released, even though Season 3 is defined by one dumb line, even though the game doesn't like me, even though I'm making a what the hell video about this entire game, in spite of everything, I'm still here, and I can definitively say, I love this game. You know, when I can play it. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you summon Samurai Chizuru. By the way, it turns out that vision card also chains of Extreme Nova.